So the organization of your consciousness as an individual very much determines the organization of your consciousness when you enter into the difficult territory, which is a greater difficulty than the outer world and the human life, because it deals with the fundamental capacity to be with something that there's no reference for in your normal human consciousness. Becoming educated spiritually is unfortunately a derived knowing of what it's really like. The nature of the confusion and the morass and the incapacities and the dejections and the quality of the moods and the characters don't have a precedence in terms of your normal samskaric patterns of behavior or world as you've known it. Preparing people for the spiritual path has to be done through the incremental exposure to spiritual energy. Spiritual path doesn't really begin until spiritual energy starts working in your body. You can have awareness and you can expand in the awareness. But the nice thing is awareness is going the wrong direction for the involution. It thinks it's going to something spacious and vast and true, and there is something that exists in these domains, but then this human in you is left behind. So it will never be able, if that is the only strategy, of really involving these deeper parts of the very own, the design of you, so that you can be a channel and instrument for the universe to use you. When the universe starts coming through you, there's so much love. There's so much capacity for feeling empathy. There is so much spaciousness for whatever is arising, rather than reactivity or agendas or projections or anticipation. All the qualities that the Gita points to, the divine attributes, come without you having to do anything. You become a divine being when you're allowing the spiritual energy to do its work in you. Now, this is my path. I'm both feet in the dirt, roots into the earth, and I feel that's probably why the universe chose me, because there was enough solidity in the personality that it could take a benefit, it could learn from the process and organize itself to move into alignment. So it's a path of embodiment. It's a path of action. It's a path of mobilizing that new, which can be uncaviling, which can move beyond the structures of fear and doubt and confusion, even if they arise. Who can learn how to be uncertain and vulnerable and able to act anyway, beyond itself. And that, of course, is what you're becoming. First for yourself, and then for others. So I want to speak a little bit before we open up to the room about the nature of the power of the Guru force, or that which is beyond the gunas. So the analogy that came to me was when I was coming out of one of my samadhis in the morning, and it just showed up, and it was this recognition of the Ganges. And the nature of the Ganges arises out of the stone somewhere up in the Himalayas. I've never been there. I've heard of it. I've seen pictures. And it emerges from there, and then it goes down and becomes this mighty river. And this mighty river then goes and feeds much of India. And the nature of the river is that what it does is it pushes through its force debris that opens up secondary currents, creeks, and second tributaries that go off of it. The nature of the Ganges is it became powerful when it found the ocean. It was, I would say it another way, it became fulfilled its possibility as its destiny determined when it found the ocean. So the nature of this is true for the tributaries. Although there's this one massive current that comes through, which it would be comparable to the force of the Sat Shree, and it starts opening up your inherent tributary that's based by your samskaric pattern, that has a part of you linked somewhere in your past to that great river that you connected to. And when you're with one who carries that, it brings something of its force into the current that you're carrying and starts moving you also to that which will be your ultimate goal, which will be the ocean. This movement of someone who awakens spiritually, it means the possibility of that latent inherent for that which they seek has now become linked with something that is empowering that quality to come and become articulate or come to start experiencing itself in you as you. It has one destination, the ocean. And when it gets to that destination, it becomes mighty. But the current itself can only go so far in a tributary before the blockages and the densities and accumulated shallownesses of that particular tributary has been moved through different seasons, through different cycles, and has created a larger and more capable channel for that larger current to come through. That each stage of the spiritual path is a transition in the unfolding of that inherent samskaric pattern that has obscured you from directly connecting to that current for yourself. So this movement of debris is not a happy time. It sucks. You didn't think you had to deal with it because you didn't have enough current to push it up to the surface. And what you do is what you push up to the surface becomes a channel. It becomes a means, it becomes a path, your path. And it forms in time, in every time you move something that was not able to be moved previously, and those are the different stages of the spiritual journey. Now, for many people on the spiritual path is, maybe modern people, 50 to 75 lifetimes from their initial awakening. So there is this long-term process, and it's often forwarded or stopped at death. Then you run on the momentum of how far you got compared to what you were, and you disembodied, and you can't move the debris if you're not in a body. Then you take another birth, and it will be something of the remaining samskaras that will determine that birth, and you will come with some degree of spiritual capacity. You'll be born again, maybe a yogi, maybe just a struggling, miserable human being looking for something other than that, and beginning to learn how to recognize their own role and why their life keeps showing up that same way. So there becomes a maturing of the soul. When the maturing of the soul has a steady progress, then of course they traverse a lot of debris. And that steady progress is assured when you happen to have a handy source of that current. If there's one who's in a physical body, who you're connected to, then you can be assured of a relatively steady, if not dramatic, process of moving through samskaric patterns. And you still have to travel the distance to that ocean. It isn't, and for some that distance is much longer than for others. But whatever it'll be an evolution. I might say another word, an involution, because that's where it lives, within you. So it's making room for that ocean that is the core of what you are already, but that's not apparent because you're living in the bubble, in the drop, seemingly disconnected from the ocean. So maybe I'm taking the analogy too far, but the principle being is that the nature of the force, or the Sat Shree force, the Guru force, the force of the Supreme Being, is a current of becoming, and the inherent experience of it is a sense of possibility, of aliveness, of love, and some of those results are peace, spaciousness, knowingness beyond your normal knowing, intuition, and a willingness to sacrifice and serve. These are the evidence that the samskaric patterns have shed enough, that you're now emerging up as the leading point of what's next in your particular tributary. And you become a collaborator with this flowing from some place beyond us into this dimension and going through, traversing the many lifetimes. The thing that happens for all people at some point, but for those in these times, is we get stuck. We hit something we can't go through, and in the process of trying to avoid the thing we're resisting, we shut out the current or strangle it so that it becomes a trickle. And then the current spreads out horizontally, which is into life. It starts looking again into the horizontal experience and expansion, the broadness of what it is to be alive. And that it can be a very rich human experience happening during these times, and it's accumulation of a next level of samskaras, not as heavy as the ones before the strangulation, but that which will then continue to also carry more debris in the future lives. This is why you have to find that which is beyond samskara, beyond happiness or pain, beyond pleasure or pain, sorrow, or all those other dualities that shape human nature. They're still there, but when one gets to a certain stage of the journey, it becomes lighter. Because the integration and the broadness and the depth and the width of the maturing person is now more able to move through these with more capacity. You find out what works. You find out how you're the factor. You find out what is your relationship with existence as an opportunity for you to expand, to learn, to grow, to move into the world in other ways. So where is the point of no return? The point of no return is a tipping point. You could say it's something to do with the topography of the samskaras you accumulated, right? Because first you were a tributary fairly high up in these domains, and as you died, there is a different levels of how deep you have to go in order to keep the momentum going, and at some point, you're as deep as you need to be, and the path to the ocean is now set. That means it's an inevitable movement. And the part when you come up against something that you didn't know how to be with, instead of strangling the current, it comes and assists you to move beyond what you could move beyond, because you now have a force of an inevitability, a gravity that is taking you into the depths of yourself. So anyway, this analogy came to me in a very brief time, maybe 10 seconds. And I felt that it was it's how nature and spiritual development are related.